Hello, my wandering souls, my fearless seekers. I'm so happy to have you here. Today's reading is going to be about the inner critic, that loud, overbearing voice that shows up the moment you do something new or aspire to achieve just a little bit more. It tells us we're not good enough, it tells us we're unworthy, and it keeps us small. So the cards today will reveal how the inner critic might show up for you, what you need when this inner critic shows up, and what's possible when you stop listening to this inner critic or taking what it says for truth. Take what feels correct, leave what does not, and if you're interested in exploring this topic beside me, over on Patreon, we are doing a little bit of a deep dive into the inner critic and how to navigate that. So the timestamps and anything you need to know or would like to know about my Patreon page and joining my inner circle will be in the description box. There are 3 piles for you to choose from. Use your intuition, choose one or all 3. And for those who would like a close-up of the cards today, let me do that right now. For Soul Path 1, we have the Enchanter, Deception and Trickery. For Soul Path 2, we have the Painter, Productivity and Creation. And for Soul Path 3, we have the Heir, Unseen Potential and Hesitation. So when you feel ready, choose the pile that you're being drawn to the most. And I'll see you in your reading very shortly. For those who chose the Enchanter, Deception and Trickery, this reading is going to be for you. I feel that your inner critic can be very persuasive, and there's a deceptiveness and a trickery with the inner critic as well. It tricks you into things that are not true. It tricks you into believing things that are not true, that are not there. So there could be some illusions at play when this inner critic shows up. So I feel this inner critic is really getting you to believe something or see something that is untrue about yourself. Now, this inner critic could be part of a belief or a story that you've carried for a really long time, and it's something that is ingrained in you, something that you've even learned. So there might be something about challenging this inner critic a little and what it's making you believe about who you are, what you can achieve. I didn't shuffle these, so we're going to do that right now. We're going to get 3 cards and look at the bottom of the deck. Let's first look at how your inner critic shows up. How does the inner critic show up for Soul Path 1? Knight of Cups, yes. It shows up when you start moving towards the things that you're really heart-led by. This could be relationships. It could be in projects or pursuits that you feel really called and guided to follow. There's also something about emotional availability or a vulnerability here. You could be a very sensitive person, so you kind of absorb other people's energies. And so anytime you move with that intuition, you move with that inner knowing, you do something that you're passionate about, your inner critic comes in and maybe makes you feel too sensitive, too heart-led, too soft, too soulful. But that's just not true. It may also make you believe that you need to be like other people. What you need when this inner critic shows up is the Ace of Cups. And this isn't just self-care. Self-care is protection against this inner critic. Self-care is doing that challenging, difficult thing of not listening to it, not dimming your light, not being hard on yourself, of not blaming, shaming, judging. That is part of that kind of more difficult aspect of self-care. It's not about necessarily bubble baths and escapism. It is about confronting that inner critic. It is about caring for yourself in a way that you would care for an inner child or somebody that you love. And it's doing the same thing for yourself. How would you care for someone else that is being really hard or critical on themselves? And this is softening the edges a little bit. And really following the flow of how you naturally want to move, where you want to move towards, and not in a way that kind of bulldozes the inner critic, because the inner critic is there to protect you, to prevent you from doing something, to help you avoid something. So it could have very innocent reasons underneath all of that criticism, but just double check that. So what's possible when you stop listening to this inner critic, or when you stop taking it as truth? Something big happens here with the Temperance card, and it's going to be a process. I love that this Temperance card has or is balancing water on either side and is sort of breaking that flow of water and splitting it. So there's a balance here. There's kind of keeping things open for clarity, kind of opening things up, keeping things clear, keeping the path clear, staying grounded, but also staying connected to your emotions and how that is showing up in your body, regulating within that body, and constantly taking those triggers, those reactive moments, and turning that into gold. What can you learn from that experience? What are you learning about your body? What are you learning about how to respond? What are you learning about expanding your capacity to hold those emotions or nurture those emotions in some way in the moment? Temperance essentially is about inner peace, but it's not a destination. It is something that you continuously have to nurture, foster, come back to. So it's maintaining that emotional equilibrium as you are moving through life and butting up against this imposter syndrome. And bottom of the deck is guidance or a small step forward with the Ace of Swords in reverse. So I feel like this is a very truth-seeking card. It is an ace, so it is about your truth, and right now it is in reverse. So there could be a fogginess around what the truth is, because again, this could be something that was inherited. It could be something that was told to you so many times that you learned a story, a behavior, a reaction to something. Now it's time to rewrite that story. What would you like to do if this imposter or if this inner critic did not exist? What would you do in spite of this inner critic being present? So to me, this feels like gaining a little bit of clarity about understanding this inner critic a little bit more, understanding the stories, understanding the beliefs, and how that has affected your life, and also how it prevents you from moving towards something, from attaining something, from believing something that you would like to believe about yourself or your story, and challenging that, rewriting that story, really digging up what the truth is. And if it's a truth that feels a little icky and it's not something that you want to believe or you don't want to be associated with, then how can you start to take small steps to rewrite that story? This is that shifting point of, do I want to keep listening and have it stop me in my tracks and have it make me believe in something that I don't want to be true anymore, or I don't want to be true at all? Or do I take some time to understand this critic and start rewriting my story, start embodying the knowledge and the wisdom that I am learning about this, and acting and choosing and behaving differently over and over and over again? Specifically when this inner critic shows up. So this is today's reflection, my dear Soul Path 1. Like and subscribe if you'd like to continue exploring these messages with me, and head into the description for more ways to connect. Thank you again, and I'll see you in your next reading. For those who chose the Painter, this message is going to be for you. So there's a strong connection here to creativity, crafting, to creation of something, but also to this pressure. I'm feeling pressure to make things beautiful, pressure to make things perfect, pressure to create, pressure to perform. So I wonder if your inner critic constantly pressures you or pushes you forward. There's such a grind or a working, you may have a strong work ethic, but that also might be part of that inner critic voice saying, don't stop, you're going to fall behind. Don't stop, you have to make money, which is a very real reality. But it just feels like nothing is ever good enough for this inner critic. So let's look at how your inner critic shows up or how it might destabilize you. Okay, 4 of Wands. What do you need to know, or what do you need when this inner critic shows up? I feel like your inner critic, oh, wow, yeah. It's intense. And then we'll get one more. What's possible? Love it. So, small step forward is underneath the deck there. So first, let's talk about the 4 of Wands. How does your inner critic destabilize you or show up? I feel like it's when you are happy, when you're happily building something, creating something, planning for long-term success or planning for a long-term goal. You're rooting yourself down. And then all of a sudden, there's some kind of panic or pressure that sets in that maybe makes you feel like what you're doing isn't enough, or maybe makes you think that what you're building isn't the correct thing. But yeah, there's something about commitment here, of building a foundation, of even celebrating something, of being really happy that you've achieved something. And then your inner critic is, no, it's not good enough. You didn't do it fast enough. You didn't do it. You weren't creative enough. But yeah, there's just an enough story here and this pressure. So what you need when this inner critic shows up is the Tower. There's something about being surprising, almost doing something that really confronts this inner critic. Because I do feel that it is trying to uproot your foundations. It's like it's making you move the goalpost when the goalpost doesn't need to be moved. And so it's really working on the foundations of this particular inner critic. And it's interesting that we're talking about foundations again with this Tower, because that's essentially what it is that something is being built on faulty foundations. And not to say that what you're creating is built on faulty foundations, although the process in which you're doing something may be driven by that inner critic, which is a faulty foundation. It is a false belief that if you don't do X, Y, Z, if you don't do it in this way, if you don't do it in this timing, that it's all going to fall apart. So I feel like the challenge, or maybe what you need to do in these moments, is to confront this inner critic and destroy the foundation that this inner critic has created for you. Because that inner critic foundation of not enough, not fast enough, good enough, creative enough, this pressure to do things from that place of fear or from that place of pressure needs to be torn down, so that you can build a new way of working, a new way of creating, a new way of expressing in your own time, in your own way. But first, a major shift needs to happen, a transformation, an awakening. And so by really tuning into what this inner critic is saying and how it's saying, what it's trying to get you to do or not do, That's going to really help inform whether or not this critic is helpful. I'm going to say that it's not. But maybe it is also showing you where you need to build a stronger foundation within your process, within your practice. And so how can you extract the guidance or the message or the benefit from this inner critic? But it's definitely looking at something from a different point of view, getting rid of this inner critic's voice within your decision making, within your creative expression. And the Ten of Wands in reverse is what's possible when you stop listening. The pressure is relieved. The Ten of Wands in reverse. So you're no longer carrying what's not yours to carry. And there's a saying that I always love, it's just because you can doesn't mean you should. So there is a release of all these obligations and expectations and shoulds that happen when you confront this inner critic and say, you know what? That's not how I want to move in the future. That's not how I want to create. That's not, the foundation that I want to build upon is this pressure, this panic, this grind. So what does that look like? What else would you like to build that foundation upon? And what do you need to let go of or release or remove from your process in order to build up on a more sturdy foundation so that you're not burned out, so that you're not being pressured to move forward, so that you're not moving from a place of fear? And some guidance or a small step forward is to express in your own way. Express in a way that lights you up. Express in a way that is aligned to your rhythms, that makes you feel playful, that is rooted in who you are. There's something about a soul expression coming through. Maybe a soul-led path. It's about bringing that light to the surface and not allowing that inner critic to dim it. So it's almost like rebelling against the inner critic. That is the overall message that I'm getting. And in that process, you're going to relieve a lot of burdens that you've been carrying, that this inner critic has told you to carry because you need to, or you should, or it's expected of you. All of those go away when you show up fully knowing who you are, what you value, what you want to express, how you want to express, and doing that in a way that's confident. Not allowing that inner critic to get in the way of that. So that is today's reflection, my dear Soul Path 2. Like and subscribe if you'd like to continue exploring these messages with me, and head into the description for more ways to connect. Thanks again, and I'll see you in your next reading. For those who chose the Heir, this message is going to be for you. So I feel your inner critic might come from a place of inherited voices. So voices that are not yours, that are people in your family or some kind of family connection. And there is such again, I'm getting pressure with this one as well. I got pressure in Soul Path 2, but this pressure to be all you can be. And if you're not living to your fullest expectation or your fullest potential, then you're not living, you're not succeeding. And so there's such a high standard that I'm getting with this. And I feel like your goals, your dreams, your visions, and even the expectations of yourself might be really grand, but they may not be realistic. And they might not even be aligned with your own values, what you feel is important to you and how you want to live your life. So I feel like the inner critic is trying to bring out this inner potential or unseen potential, but with this hesitation, I feel like you might be hesitating because it's not what you want for yourself. It's not what you want for your life. And this inner critic just wants you to be more, but maybe you're satisfied with where you are. And that's okay. So how does your inner critic destabilize you or show up? Okay, there's an analysis factor here with the Seven of Pentacles. There might be some over-analysis here. And looking at all of the ways, there's just like looking at all of the details of where I can perfect something, where I need to work harder, what's working and what's not. But I feel like that's a constant thing. And so it shows up possibly maybe in your work, maybe within your home, or in how you live your life, in your lifestyle, in how much money you make, how you look. So there could be a lot of material aspects with this inner critic, and it can be very tough on you when it comes to not having enough, not looking a certain way. And so I feel like there's just this constant analysis of, okay, I got to fix, I got to change, I got to improve. And that feels very tiring to me. I don't know if it's tiring to you, but what do you need when this inner critic shows up? So there's two. I feel it's interesting. I feel like you need two things. You're the only soul path that got 2 cards for this position. I feel like you need to identify the root of this inner critic. I do feel it has to do with the father figure within your family unit. And it goes back to the root of your family life, your home life when you were a child. So you could have had a very overbearing parent, a very critical parent, and now you've inherited that criticism for yourself. So now whenever you work, whenever you apply yourself in life, you're hearing that inner critic at the back of your mind, but it may not be your voice. It might be someone else's. So I feel like first understanding the root cause and or the root of that expression. Where is it coming from? Who is it coming from? And I feel understanding is going to be that first step. And almost disconnecting from that voice in some way, of seeing it objectively, of seeing it from a place of not your story, of a story that was passed down to you. And it's almost like you have to dig up the roots so that you can prune it out of your life slowly but surely. And what else you need to know is looking at your successes. I feel like you might not do that enough, specifically if you're resonating with this message of constantly needing to change, to fix, to improve, and not really stopping to look at what you have achieved, comparing yourself 5 years ago to comparing yourself now, and even in the small day-to-day wins. In my coaching course, one of the things that we are doing with ourselves as coaches, but also with our clients, is really looking at the small wins in the day, because those are the things that compound and create grand success over time. It's not about having, a $10,000 day, and it's not about having this grand home to live in, or this nice car, or having all these vacations. What are the small wins? And how can you use those wins to propel you forward? Because I feel you have achieved quite a bit, but you're not taking that into consideration. You're not even looking at that as a big win. So I think looking at the small successes and even the big successes that maybe you are underestimating, I feel are really going to be important. So what's possible when you stop listening? The Hierophant in reverse, and the 4 of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck. So again, another number 4, which is about those roots, the foundation. And that is part of a small step forward for you, but we'll get into that in a minute. The Hierophant in reverse is about doing things differently, about understanding the traditions, the routines, the beliefs, the stories that maybe you've inherited or carried that you no longer resonate with, and getting really familiar with that. I feel like once you stop listening to this inner critic and you start moving forward, you're going to understand the beliefs that you've been carrying for so long that aren't yours and you don't really believe in or resonate with. You're going to maybe understand that where you are isn't aligned with your values, and that the traditions and the maybe the things that you're striving for is not really rooted in something that is meaningful for you. And I feel you're going to learn a lot in this process. But this is also going to change the way you've been living, the way you've been working, the way you've been seeing your world, your lifestyle. So I think a lot is going to change once you stop listening to the inner critic. And the Four of Pentacles is guidance or a small step forward. The Four of Pentacles, this is about slow and steady compounding wins. Yeah, this just makes me feel like it's not about doing it all. It's about doing the things that are most important and valuable to you outside of what this inner critic says. And building up on that slowly but steadily. Building maybe a new foundation of how you want to work. Also, what I'm getting here is that there could be this loss of income in that process if this has to do with career, but I think it's going to be more fulfilling for you in the end, because it's not about doing everything and hoping that something lands and trying to constantly improve and putting your energy in things that aren't really aligned. This is about getting really specific and having a really good foundation of this is what works for me. And it may not be as monetarily fruitful in the beginning at first. You know, it's kind of like you have to go through a loss before you can get a significant gain, but the gains might be less financial and more spiritual, more lifestyle oriented. But it's first about aligning to what feels true for you, what you want to believe, and challenging that inner critic, of building up on those successes and going against the grain of what that inner critic has to say, because you believe that to be true, not what the inner critic has to say. So that is today's reflection, my dear Soul Path 3. Like and subscribe if you'd like to continue exploring these messages with me, and head into the description for more ways to connect. Thanks again, and I'll see you in your next reading.